People are making apocalypse jokes like there's no tomorrow. Too soon?
No, it's topical.
Hey, welcome to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in the Season 1 finale of The Last of Us. Well, look guys, if you've never played the games, welcome to the ending. We've all been coping with this ending for 10 years now. So I'm going to get into the similarities to the game, how this ending has been foreshadowed since the first episode, and as always, we're going to talk about all of the themes of this episode and the show as a whole. And later, we're going to break down that gut-wrenching ending. So let's break this bad boy down. We open with Anna, Ellie's mother, running through the woods. Now this is by far my favorite Easter egg in the entire show. Anna is played by Ashley Johnson. 80s babies might know her as Chrissy on Growing Pains. Marvel fans recognize her as the Waitress in the Avengers. But a lot of you also might know her from Critical Role, where she plays D&D with a group of other prominent voice actors on a weekly Twitch live stream.
Hey! This is a crime scene!
Yes, a crime scene that I made.
But Last of Us fans know her as the actor who plays Ellie in the game. So, Ashley Johnson has given birth to Ellie in the game and in the show. That's so cool. I know, right? She even kind of looks like Bella Ramsey. And by the way, one of the nurses at the end is also on Critical Role. She is played by Laura Bailey, who, in The Last of Us 2, plays the character of Abby. Now, that character has a connection to this episode, but because of spoilers, that's all I'm going to say. Shout out to heavy spoilers for that really cool Easter egg. Now, all of this is a new sequence that does not appear in the game, although the backstory, the relationship between Marlene and Anna, was implied in the game and in the American Dreams comic book. Now, showing Anna struggling to reach this house, how she falls, how she outruns the infected, and then her water breaks. All of this is showing that Anna is the first of many people who fight to keep Ellie alive. When Anna is attacked by an infected, she fights back with her knife, the same knife that Ellie has used all through the series, drawing one of many parallels to her and Sarah. Remember, Sarah was briefly fascinated by Joel's knife in the first episode. And this episode is the first time we've seen exactly why Ellie is immune. Like Blade, she's a daywalker. What do you mean, what's a daywalker? Well, like Blade. Blade's a vampire hunter who can walk in the daylight because his mom was attacked by a vampire while he was still in the womb. In the same way, Ellie's mom was attacked at the moment she was giving birth. So Ellie's stem cells maybe found a way to control the fungus. Science and stuff. That's right, science and stuff. So the episode begins with the mother giving her life to save Ellie, and it ends with a father taking life to save Ellie. In a lot of ways, The Last of Us is a pretty simple show. It's about Joel overcoming his own personal trauma. Ellie becomes the symbol of all the good in the world, so for Joel, the world without her is not worth living in. This is because Ellie allowed Joel to finally regain his humanity by overcoming his trauma, anxiety, and panic attacks. And this makes Joel such a relatable hero. All of us have had trauma or anxiety or depression. Like, I lost someone very close to me a few years ago. I was super depressed. I hated life. And therapy helped me get through that. And maybe there's something in your life that's interfering with your own happiness. You might want therapy, but you're not sure where to get started. And that is where BetterHelp comes in. They're the sponsor of this video. BetterHelp listens to your needs and helps match you with your own licensed therapist. This is not a crisis line or self-help. This is professional therapy. See, I'm from a rural area where it's very hard to find therapists. So BetterHelp is perfect with a network of more than 25,000 therapists, the largest therapy service in the world. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and therapy preferences. That way, BetterHelp can match you with a custom-picked therapist from their network. It's very accessible. You can log into your account at any time and send messages to your therapist. Plus, you can schedule weekly phone or video sessions, so you don't have to sit in uncomfortable waiting rooms. But if your therapist isn't right for you, BetterHelp makes it easy to switch. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. And we have a special offer for Screen Crush fans. Click the link in the description to get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp. That's HELP.com/ScreenCrush, or you can click this QR code. Now, back to the Easter eggs. After Anna gives birth, one of the first words that Ellie ever hears is the F word.
Tell him, Ellie.
That really explains her potty mouth, right?
With you.
Is that?
Yeah.
I'm Sally f***ing right.
Carol. Carol.
Who broke her f***ing finger?
Then Marlene shows up to the house, and she's played by Merle Dandridge, the only actor in the show who's playing the same character that she played in the game. Marlene finds her best friend and her new daughter, and it's hard to not find a parallel here with other Chosen One babies. Moses was discovered floating in a basket. Kal-El was in a rocket ship. So this is an ancient storytelling trope of babies with a special purpose being left alone and vulnerable and then being taken in. This is all building up to the idea that Ellie exists for a reason. Again, the show has been building up this idea in our heads for a long time.
I believe everything happens for a reason. It does. I can prove it to you.
Or like when Ellie talked about her greater purpose.
We find the fireflies, it all works,
They draw my blood and put it through some of their fancy machines and make a cure.
Now, a lot of you would argue that Ellie ends up existing for a nobler reason, to redeem Joel, but we can talk about that later in the episode. So, as Marlene arrives in the house, we hear Anna singing,
There is a Boys to Men to the end of the road.
No. That is The Sun Always Shines on TV by Aha. And there is a lot of hidden meaning packed into this song. First, you'll remember that Ellie has an Aha cassette tape, and she and Riley had their adventure set to their song Take On Me.
Be careful.
Now, knowing that Anna was an Aha fan, this makes me wonder if Marlene found a way to give this cassette to Ellie because she knew that her mom would have wanted that for her. So the lyrics that she sings are, touch me, how can it be? Believe me, the sun always shines on TV. Hold me close to your heart. Touch me and give all your love to me.
To me.
Now, there's a very literal meaning here. A mother is singing to her daughter to hold her close, to get all of her love while she still can. But on a more meta level, the song is a deeply ironic statement about how television prepares us for happy endings that never come in the real world. The music video begins with a man singing to a woman as the man slowly becomes a drawing, and it's a very slow, somber part of the song. And then comes the end card, the same way that this prologue is showing the end of Anna's story but the beginning of Ellie's. So this show within a show depicts a man who is transforming into something else so he can't be with the woman he loves. In the same way, Anna is transforming into an infected so she can never be with Ellie. And then the band performs the song in a cathedral in front of mannequins.
What's all that about?
Well, the song is about the deep loneliness in the singer's heart, and he's wondering how he can feel so terrible about life but the TV always shows such a nice sunny reality. It paints a disconnection between the performer and the audience, like a mannequin audience and a human singer. And in the same way, we're watching this show, and up to now, we're expecting a happy ending. Ellie saves the human race, hooray! We want that Hollywood ending. Instead, we got something that's a lot more human,
I'll say.
So Anna has a knife to her own throat, ready to kill herself when she starts to turn. Now there's a parallel here with the death of Riley, which Ellie explains at the end of the episode.
Be all poetic and just lose our minds together. And then she did. And I had to.
Now, in that same monologue, Ellie says that Riley was the first person to die for her. But actually, Riley wasn't the first. Her mother was.
Or she wanted to hold her daughter as long as she could. That's so sad.
Yes, it is. So Marlene says,
It would delay getting out of the zone.
and I'm guessing she's talking about the Fedra quarantine zone in Baltimore. Frank said that it fell apart about 4 years after Outbreak Day,
Baltimore QZ, it's gone.
which would place Ellie at about 15 or 16 years old. Frank could have even been part of Marlene's group.
We started with 10, but yeah, I'm alone.
Initially, Marlene refuses to kill her best friend,
I can't kill you.
but she ends up finding the resolve to do it. This is foreshadowing how she does not hesitate to let Ellie die at the end of the episode.
I'm the only one who understands. I have no other choice.
And this is what's really messed up. Marlene is so keen to let Ellie die because she wants her friend's death to be for a reason. She wants to have killed her friend for a greater purpose. So you could argue that, like Joel, she has a selfish motivation, but we're going to get into whether Joel was right or wrong later in the video. But now we go to the present day. In the game, this chapter of the story is called Spring, and here we can see that the snow has melted and the plants are growing again. Spring is a time of renewal and rebirth, so naturally it's a time when we expect good things to happen, like Ellie giving birth to a new world where the human race can be reborn. Ellie is still coping with the trauma of being sexually assaulted by a cannibal, so the world is very muffled and distant.
Ellie!
And this is how she opens this chapter in the game.
Ellie!
And just like in the game, Joel is trying to cheer her up.
Beefaroni, Chef Boyardee.
Oh, cool.
And you remember, they ate that in episode 4.
What am I even eating?
That is 20-year-old Chef Boyardee ravioli.
That guy was good.
And then he tries to cheer her up with Boggle. Who does he think she is? Peggy Hill? Now, just like in the game, the scene takes place in an overgrown traffic jam, and Joel is like overwhelmingly optimistic, ready to begin a new life with Ellie as his surrogate daughter. In the game, he says,
And once we're done with this whole thing, I'm gonna teach you how to play guitar.
and here he's just as excited to begin playing music again.
Maybe I should find one. I haven't played in forever.
And more importantly, he wants to teach Ellie how to play.
In fact, I was thinking maybe I could teach you.
So all through the show, we've talked about how the writers have created a story that's about how people express love. The channel Filmwise did a brilliant breakdown about this, which I highly recommend you check out. Joel shows his love through protection. He protects Sarah, he protects Tommy, and ultimately he comes to love Ellie through protecting her. But he also expresses his love by teaching Ellie how to protect herself. However, in Joel and Sarah's house, we also see their love for music. A sticker from Austin City Limits, band posters, Sarah's t-shirt, a guitar. So for Joel, sharing his love of music with someone else is deeply personal because it reminds him of his daughter. So it's a big step that he wants to teach Ellie how to make music, which he considers to be a personal expression of love. So they lay out their plan.
Cut through that building to get around that stuff, find a skyscraper, go up and look around.
And this is funny because like they're talking like they've done this 100 times before, and in the game you do this like at every single city you ever get to where there's rubble, which is why they sound so bored from this routine. A lot of moments from this episode are taken directly from the game, like looking for a ladder, giving a boost, and then Ellie running off to see the giraffes. Now the giraffe sequence is beautiful and also taken straight from the game. Now the giraffes are one of the game's most iconic moments. After fighting hours and hours of zombies and death, you're given this little haven of life.
Life, well, finds a way.
That's right. And you know what? The way they pet and feed these giraffes is even very reminiscent of how Alan and the kids feed the Brachiosaurus in Jurassic Park. The cordyceps shows us the ugliness of nature, that the natural world is filled with death and animals trying to kill each other. But this scene shows us the beauty of the natural world. It's also showing Ellie how the world can flourish when there are no cordyceps. There's a family of giraffes, and seeing this gives her hope and breaks her loose from her trauma. And man, the way Joel smiles at her. And then she says,
You can't deny that view.
also from the game,
You can't deny the view, though.
but remember, this is also a callback to the first scene when Joel and Ellie started to click and they had a chance to bond.
But man, you can't deny that view.
So Joel has finally reached a point of fulfillment in his life, but as a protector, he is still a pessimist and afraid that it's all going to fall apart.
Maybe there's nothing bad out there, but so far there's always been something bad out there.
And then, just like in the game, he tries to talk her out of going forward.
We don't have to do this.
After all we've been through.
It can't be for nothing.
And that is the key line of this episode. When people live in a post-apocalyptic hellscape, they search for meaning, for purpose. For Bill, it was Frank.
And you were my purpose.
For Marlene, it's the cause.
To restore democracy and freedom.
For Henry, it was Sam. For Kathleen, it was revenge. And Pastor Dave was ready to provide purpose to his flock. This is where Joel and Ellie have irreconcilable differences. In Ellie's mind, it's not enough to survive. There has to be reason for your existence. While for Joel, for the past 20 years, he has been focused on mere survival, not really living his life. In fact, in this episode, we found out that he tried to end his life.
I was the guy who shot and missed.
But he was unable to kill himself, so instead he put himself in dangerous situations for the next 20 years, hoping somebody else would do it for him. Now this puts Joel in a state between being dead and alive. His body was still going, but he was dead inside, just like one of the infected. So as we've been talking about for weeks now, the cordyceps are a metaphor for Joel's internal darkness. But actually this episode's twist made me think of that metaphor in a new light, which I'm going to talk about later in the video. See, for Joel, he does need all of these deaths to have a higher purpose. But for him, Ellie is that purpose. Without her, there is no world. But as we've seen in past episodes, Ellie has a romantic vision of herself, being a savior to all mankind.
My blood is medicine.
Then they ask about the future.
And when we're done, we'll go wherever you want. Tommy's, Sheep Ranch, the moon.
Which is a callback to episode 6.
Dream of sheep ranches on the moon.
And when you know the end of this episode, this line from Ellie hits a lot harder.
But there's no halfway with this. We finished what we started.
The two of them walk through an army medical center, just like in the game.
I ended up in a triage just like this.
But unlike in the game, Joel talks about Sarah.
No, she was gone already.
And notice how he's finally able to speak about her casually, tenderly. It's really moving, and it shows how he's managed to cope with his trauma because Ellie has taken her place in his heart. Now he confesses his suicide attempt, saying that it was on the second day of the outbreak. So the broken watch reminds him of Sarah, and so does the scar on his face, the scar that he's had to look at every day in the mirror for 20 years. Now notice there's also a contrast here with Bill and Frank. They said,
This isn't the tragic suicide at the end of the play. I'm satisfied.
while Joel says,
I couldn't have been more ready. Went to pull the trigger, I flinched.
Now, if you were going to take like a mystical, romantic view of this, then you could say that some higher power was saving Joel for a purpose, to save Ellie. Now that's the sun shining on TV version of events, the version that we expect to see on a show, but isn't actually that realistic, or true to the characters that we've come to know. Afterwards, they have this lovely exchange.
So time heals all wounds, I guess.
It wasn't time that did it.
God, what a great scene. These are two emotionally closed off people who have found ways to say I love you with just a look. And then she breaks out the best pun of the series.
People are making apocalypse jokes like there's no tomorrow. Too soon?
No, it's topical.
And I love that 20 years after the apocalypse, too soon is still a thing. And then the stun grenade comes in, and notice if you play this at 0.25 speed, you can see Joel blocking to shield Ellie from the blast. And then, just like in the game, Joel wakes up in a hospital with Marlene at his side. Then the scene plays out just like it does when you play the game.
You came all this way. How'd you do it?
It was all her. She would fight like hell to get here. Take me to her.
I can't. She's being prepped for surgery.
The hell do you mean, surgery?
And then Joel immediately works out the implications.
Cordyceps grows inside the brain.
And this is where we get into the real meat of the episode, the philosophical argument about whether or not Joel or Marlene was right. The surgery will save humanity, but kill Ellie. And this was lightly foreshadowed a couple of episodes ago.
I tried with Sam.
Tried what?
I rubbed some of my blood into his bite.
Well, I reckon it's a lot more complicated than that.
She says.
We didn't tell her, we didn't cause her any fear, there won't be any pain.
And then she passes on Anna's knife to Joel. Now think about this gesture. This knife belonged to her best friend. She could have kept this in remembrance of Anna, but instead she did what Anna did and passed the knife on to a loved one. Marlene probably saw this as bringing things full circle, but for Joel, it's like Marlene just handed him Ellie's corpse, a sign that she is dead and cold. Marlene is willing to sacrifice Ellie, even though she promised Anna she would look after her. This is because her obligation to Ellie is out of duty and not out of love, whereas Joel's obligation is purely out of love. So the soldier leads him away, just like in the game.
Which way?
So now, once again, Joel is faced with a soldier who is threatening to take his baby girl away from him. And in episode 1, we already saw how that trauma triggered him to act. Now here, there is a key difference between the show and in the game. The game makes you play as Joel. You may morally disagree with what he's doing, but you are forced to go along with his decisions so you can see how the game ends. Now we actually posted a video about how The Last of Us 2 is hated but great, where I went into far more detail about this. But this is something that is unique to this medium. The story cannot be told without our cooperation. So it's a long action sequence in the game, where you're actively trying to kill all these soldiers. But in the show, the sound is more muted, like Ellie's thoughts at the beginning of the episode. For Joel, there is no purpose in the world except to save Ellie, so nothing else matters. That's why the sound is muffled and the score takes over, and the score expresses the emotions in his heart. All of these lives are worthless next to Ellie's. Some of these people have families. They have their own Ellies, and it just doesn't matter. Joel is no longer a human being. He is a single-minded murder machine with a singular purpose. Joel has become cordyceps, and it's heartbreaking to watch. And in the game, they make you kill this unarmed doctor. Like, you could just stand there forever until you finally work up the guts to pull the trigger. And just like in the game, Joel carries Ellie to an elevator and into a garage where he encounters Marlene. And you'll notice an immediate parallel here with Sarah. Joel carries both of them to safety, and this is the moment that Joel was terrified of, the reason he was having panic attacks.
It's all I've ever done. It's failure.
And now we get to the core of this philosophical argument. Now, I'm not going to get like too far into this conversation because we're probably going to make another video about it, but I want to know what all of you think down in the comments. So on the one hand, Marlene gives a very strong argument.
And then you'll die, she'll leave, then what? How long until she's torn apart by infected or murdered by raiders?
And we've already talked about how Ellie has this romanticized idea for her saving the world. My blood is medicine and all that. And young people always believe that they can go out and save the world, change a broken system, all that stuff. Marlene sums up this argument with one sentence.
Because she lives in a broken world that you could have saved.
And by the way, all of this taken straight from the game.
It ain't for you to decide.
It's what she'd want. And you know it.
Now for Joel, the world will always be broken. He's just trying to save the pieces that he can. This was foreshadowed all the way back in episode 4.
You don't think there's hope for the world? Why bother going on?
Keep going for family.
So this is really an argument about individualism versus collectivism. Joel is an individualist. He's self-sustaining, doesn't like to take help from others or make friends. He keeps a close circle around himself, and it took almost a year for him to widen that circle to include Ellie, while Marlene is a collectivist. As leader of the Fireflies, she's trying to be a light in the darkness, to restore a world that has been destroyed, a world that Joel thinks wasn't that great to begin with.
Get shoved into a middle seat, pay $12 for a sandwich.
Dude, you got to go up in the sky.
We also see Joel's disdain for collectivism when he talks about Tommy's idealism.
Tommy's what we used to call a joiner. Dreams of becoming a hero.
But at this moment, Joel is being a bit hypocritical and selfish, like this exchange.
But it isn't for you to decide.
Or you.
Marlene also did not give Ellie the choice.
We didn't tell her, we didn't cause her any fear.
And that's the crime they're both committing. They're both so afraid of Ellie's answer that they robbed her of her ability to choose. So Joel looks down at Ellie the same way that he looked down at Sarah's corpse. And in a weird way, Ellie is kind of like Joel at this moment. She's both alive and dead at the same time. Now, the cuts of the car and the subsequent flashbacks are lifted straight from the game. So we get this very slow reveal of what happened. And the lie that Joel tells is also lifted from the game.
Turns out there's a whole lot more like you.
They've stopped looking for a cure.
And when he tells her the hospital was hit by raiders, she asks,
Are people hurt?
and then the camera just lingers on Joel, and you can see this in his eyes, all those deaths, including an unarmed woman begging for her life. And Marlene's death plays out just like in the game, but all of it was worth it so he could have Ellie. The show's ending was also foreshadowed by Kathleen's monologue all the way back in episode 5.
Maybe he was supposed to die? Well, kids die, Henry. They die all the time.
And this line really connects the stories of Henry and Joel.
You think the whole world revolves around him? That he's worth everything?
So after Joel says,
I'm taking us home,
Ellie turns away from him, possibly foreshadowing an emotional divide between them in The Last of Us 2. But I will say this, originally Joel and Marlene had a deal for a car battery so Joel could get to his brother in Wyoming.
We'll get her to your crew at the State House. But before we hand her over, they give us everything that we want. If not, we kill her, there and then. Deal.
And you know what? She ended up delivering on that deal. Of course, the original deal was also for him to deliver a child and walk away, but then he had a guilty conscience and saved her life, slaughtering a whole compound of soldiers, and oh my god, The Last of Us is completely The Mandalorian.
Pedro Pascal's Child Protector shows are even more similar than we thought.
That's right, high five. So we start to wind down into The Last of Us' final haunting scene. Just like in the game, the car dies and they have to hike. And in both stories, Joel has Sarah on his mind.
Don't think I ever told you, but Sarah and I used to take hikes like this.
Well, Sarah and I used to hike like this all the time.
But in the show, Joel talks about Sarah a lot and can't help but compare her to Ellie.
She's taller. She had a killer smile. Again, not saying that you don't.
While Joel is excited about his new life, sheep and a guitar, with Ellie, he even imagines this idyllic universe where the two of them could have met.
She would have liked you.
I mean, it is striking how different Joel is in this scene. Garrulous, obsequious, trying to please Ellie.
But if you just keep going, you find something new to fight for.
It's like he's got a guilty conscience and he's terrified that his last actions will drive her away. She has this faraway look in her eyes as she comes to believe that their journey was for nothing. From the moment she was born, people have died to protect her. From her mother to Riley, Tess, all the way to the soldiers in the hospital. See, it was easy for Ellie to accept the deaths of others if it meant that they died for something, a cause that would fix the world.
This is real. Josh is real.
But now she has to live with the knowledge that they just died for her. That puts an immense amount of pressure on her to live a life with meaning. So just like in the game, she tells Joel the full truth about herself.
Just lose our minds together. And then she did. And I had to.
Just like Joel overcame his trauma by sharing his story with Ellie, she's trying to create meaning out of her own loss. For Joel, all of the deaths have led to Ellie. Now, earlier I mentioned that Ellie is a kind of Moses figure, a chosen one who was taken in as a baby and has supernatural abilities to lead her people into a new world. So this shot of her and Joel looking over Jackson reminded me of something. Moses led his people to the promised land, but he never actually got to enter it or see it. He died shortly before. Now, in the same way, Joel and Ellie have this perfect little relationship that is probably doomed to fail. As they look down on Jackson, we see the seeds of doubt in her mind, a crack that can grow into a rift between them. Before she can recommit to a new life, she asks for his oath.
Swear to me that everything you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
Now personally, I'm on team Joel was wrong, but feel free to tell me your opinions in a robust and healthy debate down below in the comments.
No, No.
It's no use, Joe.
Please
Joe, we've
don't.
got to have it out.
No.
Now, I will say that, now that the show is done, I don't feel like it was a 100% perfect adaptation. On the one hand, it added a lot of richness and layers to the story from the game. The pilot, for example, expanded on Sarah's story and showed us the details of Outbreak Day. We also got some pretty cool layered symbolism, the clocks, the biscuits, all that. Great stuff. Fantastic. And episode 3 showed the heights that an adaptation can climb to. They took a one-off story from the game that actually kind of plays like a gag, and it became a tender love story that encapsulated everything the show is about. Except Bill actually had the courage to end his life with Frank, and Joel did not.
Went to pull the trigger, I flinched.
But the main story of The Last of Us is Ellie trying to get Wes so her blood can save humanity from the cordyceps fungus.
Whatever happened to me is the key to finding a vaccine.
So in the game, the fungus is a real, existential threat. All through the game, you fight zombies, including the big mean bloater that we saw a glimpse of in episode 5. Some of the best sequences in the game, some of the most cinematic sequences are related to fighting zombies, like when you fight them in sewers. It is scary as hell and awesome. But after Kansas City, we've only seen 2 infected, one in the Riley flashback and the one that attacks Anna in another flashback. Now look, I know that we saw 2 cities overrun with infection, but by the time we get to Utah, it really seems like that humanity has this problem under control. Now, Joel's decision would have meant a lot more if there would have been, well, more of a constant threat of the infected walking around throughout the entire show. Also, not to sound shallow here, but like, zombies are awesome. We love zombie stories because it's fun watching people cut them down. People didn't just play The Last of Us for the cutscenes. You need like a little meat on the bread, you know what I'm saying? And I definitely feel like this episode in particular would have benefited from having an action scene to kind of break up some of the dialogue. Overall though, the show was amazing and definitely one of the best game adaptations ever made. It's a heartfelt examination of personal loss and trauma, and we all felt Joel and Ellie go through a personal journey together, where they learned how to work through their grief. But still, I would have liked just a bit more zombies.
I gotta have more cowbell!
Well guys, let me know your thoughts on the finale down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.